Hi, I'm Tony. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Bob Eury. So our organization's involved in the revitalization of the central city and its downtown. We have several different entities here, and we care for the public environment. We design it, we plan it, we build it.
I see.
We've actually built homeless housing a number of years ago, some SRO housing. And that gave us a chance to begin to get familiar with sort of the whole situation with homelessness. I think I'm personally sort of compelled to it because I'm an architect by training, and therefore, shelter and homes mean something to me, I think.
Wow.
I've always wondered what it is, and I believe that's what it is, okay, because I'm a builder at heart.
Yeah.
So we have been engaged for a number of years in homelessness. As the CEO of these organizations, the homeless community and the downtown community, have a relationship that goes on forever, okay? And I have, and I think because of my leadership, I think we've always wanted to really resolve the situation and end homelessness if we could, if such a thing is possible.
Yeah.
I think that's been sort of why we have taken a very committed and a very deep role in trying to work with our homeless community and frankly end homelessness in Houston.
Yeah. As a downtown business association, I understand you're putting your own money into this issue. How does that play out?
We're pretty committed to this, and what we realized is that you can try to legislate yourself out of homelessness, but you can't. You really have to solve the problem, and there's only one way to really solve it, and that is to have appropriate housing for those that have been homeless. And we also realize that while there are federal funding programs available, which we have used and continue to use, what we also realized is that there was a need for private philanthropic funding as well. So we've not only put funding in it, but we're in the process of raising funds right now to build more permanent supportive housing as part of the Way Home program here in Houston. We also have put money into rapid rehousing in years past, and we've actually had several, I think, very good episodes with that. We actually all the way back into the 1990s where we found that, helping individuals get off the street into housing could really launch a wholly different life than trying to kind of work day to day at street level. We also actually right now are even sort of trying to care for conditions for homeless that are actually on the street, under bridges, and in what I would hope is temporary situation as we gain more housing.
What kind of money are you talking about?
Well, real money. Okay. Well, the thing that's really impressive is right now with the Way Home, we're raising around $15 million for what we call the capital gap that results when you try to build housing. Through the various federal funding sources, we're able to fund operating cost. We're also able to raise a certain amount of money that can actually be used at a bank, for a loan to construct housing. And then we also have federal money to help pay for wraparound services. But when it's all said at the end of the day, you can't get a project done unless you have some cash, some equity to make it work. And so that's why we're actively out raising something it's right at $15 million.
How do you raise this money?
Well, we raise it primarily by going to foundations, both locally and nationally. I think we had a very compelling case that could be made because the Way Home program is really sort of reorganizing our whole system here for working with the homeless, such that our goal really is to help people move to the street to permanent housing with the services that they need. And so, the numbers are very impressive. It's about $665 million worth of resources that are committed, with our little $15 million as part of that. It's a very key part of that. When you do that, it's really easy to get the attention of funders because they realize their gifts and their commitments is really just a very small part of making something really big happen. And, I think there are many people, when we talk about ending homelessness, that I've had any number of people in the business community just say, you just can't be right. You can't do that. And one of the things I am appreciative of, I really truly believe we can.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to give up on that, you know.
Yeah.
I feel really strongly about that.
How do you counter when you are building a building in a neighborhood and the residents there say, well, we don't want poverty in our neighborhood or people that are homeless to come in here, and they're against that? What's some of the ways you can counter that kind of?
I think we've had the good fortune, because we've certainly felt that in some situations.
Yeah.
A couple things help. Let me just set the stage a little bit. I think we don't have zoning here. So we have, I think, in many cases, a lot of neighborhoods that are pretty mixed in terms of incomes and types of people and age of housing and that, especially in the central city. Yeah. But we also are really blessed with some very good housing providers that I think do just a spectacular job in building really quite nice residential communities, which I think would be accepted in really any community. And they're extremely well managed, and people who live there are like everybody else in the community. I mean, I think at that point I think they've been able to set a model that others in other parts of the city can look at and say, golly, this really works. I would accept this in my community. That doesn't mean, by the way, we couldn't go out tomorrow and immediately run into backlash from a given community if we were proposing a project.
Sure. With the people we're talking to, I'm seeing that Houston is definitely they're proud of your city and also optimistic. It's going to work.
It's interesting. There's a very enterprise-oriented mindset in this city. There is this mindset that anybody, if they set their mind to it, can get good things done. That has helped us in terms of moving along. But I would say this, we've had plenty of experience with neighborhoods who don't want homeless housing. And I'm not going to sit here and just say it's really easy, because it is something that it's taken some time to build, especially build a record that can now be used and seen by other people in other neighborhoods in the community.
In San Diego, well, we're still waiting on the recent count, but it's been traditionally about 8,500 homeless, and that's visual. You can see that on the streets right in the central downtown area. We haven't really seen too much of that down here. Have you noticed the difference since you've implemented all these programs and things?
I remember mid-2000s where our counts were running in a 12,000 range. It kind of came down to about 10. When we started the way home, we were at about 8,500, and not this year because we don't have the information yet either from the January count, but for last year's count, we were at 3,600. The thing that I'm impressed with is the actual numbers of people on the street are clearly less than what they used to be. It's funny because there's a lot of sensitivity by people to the number that are there, right? And I keep thinking, you just don't remember what it used to be like in terms of the number of people. I remember we did a rapid, I mean, if you look under sort of the places where there's some camping under bridges and here in the central city, I mean, the numbers are 100, maybe a little more than that, but it's just not a very large number. I remember under one particular freeway bridge here right on the edge of downtown, we did sort of a rapid rehousing. We called it the Wet and Cold Initiative back in mid-90s, and we moved like 800-900 people in one, kind of initiative to try to help people off the street. I think the challenge we had at that time is we hadn't fully thought out how does it work once you do that? And so we had a lot of motel rooms and hotel rooms and things like that, but we didn't really have because we didn't have the permanent supportive housing part of it. We didn't have the housing available. So that unfortunately it really, I think, was a learning experience for us. But I also think that it was sort of somewhat ill-conceived, not that it probably wasn't helpful to those involved. I think it definitely it bettered their lives, but let me also say, I wish it wasn't permanent. And I think that's what's working so well now. I think if you take our situation now compared to where we were in the past, there are fewer homeless people on the street. That doesn't mean there aren't homeless, because there are. But I do think that for our visitors that come into our city, there are far fewer than they may experience in other cities. It's funny because the public pushes back. Public it makes, I think, people uncomfortable seeing homeless. I think
do.
this is a very compassionate city. I've often thought the discomfort probably comes more than anything is they want to help, but they don't know how to help.
Exactly.
And so there's this notion of, this feeling of discomfort.
Yeah.
I think the thing that really strikes me about that what we have is the numbers are so much less than especially other major cities. And so what I'm finding nowadays is when I travel to another city, I'm really surprised by the number of homeless that I see compared to what we have here. And quite frankly, I'm not taking my camera out and my phone out and taking pictures, okay? But it's a little bit like I keep wanting to remind people here, we made a lot of progress. And I hope you really appreciate how much progress we've made. Not that we don't have a way to go, because we still do. And I'm particularly interested because I'd like to think, I do believe in ending homelessness. I'd like to think we're sort of in the last mile of a race. I'm a marathoner, so I'm kind of drawing that analogy, okay? And that is, I think it's hard because I think that people we do have on the street that are remaining are, I think, have extremely challenging issues and problems. I mean, from mental illness to substance abuse, dual diagnosis. I mean, I think that they're just tremendously challenging situations. And it's putting some pressure on us, I think, to really have to go back and examine some of our basic systems, our basic healthcare system in the community, our mental health system, our system for detox and things like that. I wished that the last mile would go quicker than it's going, okay? Because as you're approaching virtual zero, I believe it gets harder because of the complexities of some of the challenges that people have that are out on the street.
Yeah, but you have to pat yourself on the back because Houston has made leaps and bounds over other cities.
Well, we're pleased by that, and I guess the best way to see it is I'm glad we got those miles under us. Okay, now we got to just kind of get to the finish line here with this. And really, honestly, you never really get to the finish line. I mean, I think the reality here is we get to a situation where we've built a system of housing and services and a system of how people can move from a state of being homeless or near homeless and maybe not really becoming chronically homeless. Maybe they've fallen into homeless, but we can rapidly rehouse and we can break it and, quite frankly, help them before they really become chronically homeless. And so, it's an ongoing thing, but it's a very different system when we get to that point than I think what we faced and I think most other cities face. We actually have three entities here. We have Central Houston, which is a bit of the mothership, okay, is a private nonprofit member association. It's actually like a chamber of commerce, but we've been very involved in planning and a number of initiatives, and homelessness has been a big part of our program really for a number of years, and we're now 34 years old. We also have a public improvement district here, which assesses the businesses in downtown, and then we have also a redevelopment authority, which is funded by tax increments, which we use mainly for large redevelopment projects and some street reconstruction, sidewalks, and things like that. I think we have always felt like working with the homeless issue is just a really major part of what downtown redevelopment is all about. To me, it's not just treating symptoms. We're going to take the same approach toward working with homelessness as we do toward everything else. We're really rebuilding a city. In this case, we're rebuilding a system of housing and services, of connecting people, just the sort of the pipeline to help people, the information flows, the cooperative network of service providers, city, the governments. It's frankly every bit as complicated as we've been involved in building three sports stadia in downtown, okay, over the years. We've involved in a number of parks and other major projects. I think the complexities we face in working on homeless are every bit as difficult. And actually the funding is about the same size as some of those big facilities as well.
What would leaders in organizations like yours do in other cities to start this, working on this homeless problem?
One thing is to sort of step back and take a pretty broad look. And also, I think, to engage a lot of people in the conversation, but with a mindset that we really want to do something about this, okay, and make a real change, okay. I think one piece of learning that I had is we worked very hard, sort of in the 2004, 2005, along there with our comprehensive 10-year plan for homelessness. But I think when we sort of got the way home started with the initiative to do that, and quite frankly, it had sort of gotten to a crisis point here because the federal government our lack of progress in Houston had sort of had us singled out by the federal government that kind of said, hey, we need you to do something about what you're doing here. And fortunately, they didn't spank us too hard. They actually gave us resources, to help us do a better job. But I think one of the things that was important about that is there was this sort of step back, get all the folks, various kinds, not just business, but governmental, neighborhood, service providers, the homeless, the population, the members of the homeless community, kind of get everybody together to sit down and say, okay, what are we lacking here? What do we really need to put together to get it done? And I remember one of the things that I was on a bullpen session, and one of the things I remember saying was about just sort of the political side of it, okay? And I said, what we really need is political will, and it really can kind of come from the mayor. Fortunately, Mayor Parker at that time, she must have heard it because she really stepped in and she gave the political will to help move this forward. And it does take people with will to get this done. It's not easy, and it can be very frustrating because of the complexity of it. But if their will isn't there, you just go in circles. And there are a lot of bureaucracies involved, and it's easy for the bureaucracies to go in circles, okay? And so the fact is you need that will to kind of say, okay, here's a deadline, we're going to make it. Mayor Parker really picked up and said, we're going to set some firm deadlines for progress we're going to make. One of the things that we did, and again, partly because we'd had some experience with it for quite a while, we helped the mayor find somebody to sort of serve as her special assistant to help cut the red tape, to help bring together, but the individual we brought in, Mandy Chapman-Simple from Corporation for Supportive Housing. Mandy really had tremendous knowledge from other communities, and Corporation Supportive Housing helped too, because they also brought knowledge to the table and experience from other places. But the thing we did was also offer to the city, we'll help recruit some business and community leaders who will kind of serve as an advisory group for the mayor as this thing, is the way home sort of moved along. But part of that, I think, was to give sort of a time when there would be accountability. So the mayor would meet with this team of leaders and sort of say, here's where we are right now, here's, there's charts and graphs of the progress we're making. Then I think the most important function was to bury your bust, okay, that in these quarterly meetings, the participants would, Mandy or the mayor would say, here's the things we're having problems with. So how do we overcome these problems? And so I think there was extraordinarily good thinking and discussion of trying to help with that to kind of move everything forward, because as I said, it's not easy. And you're also, as you make progress on it, you really are in an area where you don't have experience because you're pushing forward and you're moving barriers and going into the future. And you really, you can't anticipate all the issues and problems that come up. This is actually a map. So we're actually right here, okay, where we are right now. And so this is our downtown, okay, right here. And all the color that you see on the map, all the yellows and reds and oranges, that is new housing that's been built since 1985, so it's been a little over 20 years in terms of what's been built. You can really see how much our inner city has changed. And I will say that there's this is formerly homeless, this is formerly homeless, this is formerly homeless. Let's see, there's one over here which I will pick up. I think it's right here. And there's more on the map, okay? So I think part of the whole idea of this is that housing for homeless fits into the community as the community builds at the same time.
Wow, that's wonderful.
So this is fun. We have just reprinted this map, and it's been really an interesting tool over time, just kind of keeping track with what's happened. When you think about it, if there was no color 20 years ago, that's a lot of change. I don't think we find people that
in a sense, argue with money going toward working on homelessness. I think that's not the issue. I think the issue is one of just, because it's difficult and because it's complex, that I think it's more one of is I can't deal with it. It's just too much. It's too big a thing to get your, kind of get your head around and get your hands around and really do something. And the one thing I think we have learned here is we've been able to show that we can make a difference if we all work together, and we all have a very strong vision of a common goal where we're trying to take this, and we have some deadlines. And I've seen people motivated to work together to really make a difference, which is happening.